I have to record this before I forget about it, because it seems like a really insane thought. But I had this idea that, and I know that the technology exists, where that you hook up electrodes in a hospital to your brain, and I've had this done because I had brain surgery. I've had to have brain scans a few times, and I go into the hospital, and they hook up these electrodes onto my head, and I'm looking at the electricity with the person on a screen with something hooked up to my head. I've actually had this done twice. I had to go back in to see if the electricity was working the way it was supposed to, like 2 weeks after I had brain surgery, and then like a month and a half after I had brain surgery. And I really wish that I would have thought of this, to say this to the doctor in the hospital, because he's the guy who could make it happen. Like, if I knew the guy that was allowing me that technology, and I was like, okay, don't tell anybody about this, but I'm going to bring some DMT in here so I can watch the electricity on my brain fire on this screen, and watch the electricity on my brain on DMT for the first time. That would be such a fucking insane thing to do. To be able to smoke DMT while you're watching the electricity in your own brain on a screen with those little electrodes hooked up. Maybe the viewers, like, most people probably don't know what I'm talking about. Like, maybe have not seen this, because I have never seen this. If I didn't have to have brain surgery, then I wouldn't have ever seen this. But it actually exists. And I was thinking that they could make one of those that's just a pair of goggles, so you don't have to stare at a screen, so it's just wrapped around your head, but it looks three-dimensional, like you're in a 3D theater, and you're seeing a three-dimensional view of your brain and what the electricity is doing on your brain, and you're watching that, and you've only seen like the first 3 seconds of your normal sober brain before, like, the second the goggles are on, you smoke DMT, some NN DMT, and I don't know how many people have smoked NN DMT, but you do that, and then you watch for the first time on these goggles in three-dimensional, like you're in a three-dimensional movie theater. You watch the electricity of the inside of your brain, which you know is legit, because you can tell by looking at it. And you start thinking these thoughts. You'd probably figure out exactly what parts in your brain, like the lobes, like what thoughts trigger those, or what actions. And you could figure your brain out in a way that I don't think that possibly mankind has ever been able to view their brain before, unless somebody's done that. But I don't know if the technology exists where it's three-dimensional and it's a screen like this that you put on your head. I made that up. But the part where you actually look at a screen, that's not made up. So I didn't want anyone to get confused between the two. But for all I know, they actually do have a three-dimensional one you can strap around your head, just like in a three-dimensional movie theater. But I don't know if people have thought of using it instead of watching what your brain is doing to make sure it's normal again after having brain surgery. Instead of using it for that, use it for what I just said, and see if, of course, the one that I'm talking about, like, you might not be able to get that reaction on the one that already exists, be able to figure out your brain like that. I don't know how that one works, but the one I'm talking about, I'm making it up now, where you can clearly see what thought does exactly where on your brain, because the three-dimensional model you're looking at is huge, and you can see tiny little patches on your brain, and zoom into those, and be like, huh, so right there, every time I snap my finger, that spot on my brain starts going off. And then you start doing other things like whistling, and you start doing all these things, jumping jacks or anything you can think of, and you start looking for patterns like, oh, when I hear this note in a Pink Floyd song in a certain riff, that little flash of electricity is really close to when I snap my fingers. I don't know why those two things are that close together, but there's a link there. And then you might be able to find, with dumb shit that you would never think of on your own, if you had technology that could do that, you could start figuring out how your brain works in a weird... there's some talented fucking people out there. Like, there's people that come up with such insane shit, like drummers and, like, the insane shit people do, just in the musician department. Like, if everybody in humanity could hook up to one of those machines, and, like, of course there'd be some insane fucking genius that just, like, blows everybody away. That's what always happens somewhere along the way. And one of those guys, I wonder if how evil that would turn them. They're just like, fuck, I could control all of humanity right now. Fuck all these people. And it's actually a really bad move. It's like something that could never possibly happen unless that technology gets thought of.